All right, greetings and welcome to the 0 Hour Squared Classics. This is an absolute privilege and an honor for me because the next guest had an integral part in my life, as well as an integral part in all of heavy metal history. Celebrating 40 years in the business is none other than Armored Saint, and we are joined by the lead vocalist of Armored Saint, Mr. John Bush. John,
what's up, brother?
how you doing?
How
man?
you doing, man?
Good, good. Welcome to Albuquerque. I know
I'm happy to be here.
This isn't your first time. I know you've played here before, but it's been a while.
You know what's funny is I've had like special circumstance gigs in Albuquerque.
Oh, okay.
So the first ones are Armored Saint played here twice in our history.
Right.
First time was on the Metallica Wasp tour.
Right.
And at that point, Wasp had already been off the tour.
Right.
They dropped off somewhere in Texas, I think. But we did the whole tour together in 1985. Sometime during that show, the power went out.
Yes.
Do you recall this?
I wasn't at that show. I couldn't
Okay.
make it, but everybody talked about it.
So the power went out. We were like, what's going on? And eventually the power got back on and we finished playing. That was it.
Right.
We came back around. Next year was Saxon, 1986.
That one I was there. Yeah.
Power went out.
Yes.
Power went out. It might have been the same song. I can't guarantee that. Could be Immunity on the World. I don't know about that for a fact. Power got back on. Finished the set. Whatever. We haven't played Albuquerque since then.
Yeah.
So that was 1986.
So that's a hell of a drought. We're talking 30-some, almost
Right.
40 years
Right,
of your
right.
existence. That's crazy.
And here's the weird thing too. If I'm not mistaken, and again, I try to get all my gigs correct. My memory's pretty good. Long term, short term. In 5 minutes, I won't remember what I'm telling you.
I hear you.
Played here with Anthrax, with Pantera.
Okay.
I believe that it was that show. At the end of the gig, I was driving around a whatchamacallit? What do you call it when you lift up stuff and you move things around?
Forklift?
Forklift, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Brain fart.
That's all right.
I ended up getting in that thing, driving around backstage, and almost hitting this wall that was about 30 feet in the air. And on the other side of that wall was a bunch of the people from the meet and greet. And I almost hit that wall. And if I had hit that wall, it would have fell on a bunch of people, and I could have killed some people. And if I'm not mistaken, that was Albuquerque as well.
Okay.
So I have funny memories with Albuquerque.
Well, nice.
For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's a crazy history. I remember everybody talking about how you guys blew out the sound at I believe the place was called Grand Central Station.
That sounds right. That sounds
and I
familiar.
believe, was Grim Reaper on there with you guys too?
No, Grim Reaper was not on at either one of those gigs because the first one was with Metallica and Armored Saint,
Okay.
and then the second one was Saxon. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we haven't been since.
Yeah, man. God, that's
It's
so long.
overdue.
That's a long, yeah. And tonight we're going to get ready to see you guys. We're happy. Again, privileged opening up for Wasp. I know this tour hasn't been going that long, right?
It's only the fourth show.
Only
Tonight.
the fourth show.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what were the first 3 shows like so far?
They were great. They were amazing. We played Vegas, House of Blues, then we played Anaheim, which is kind of like a local show, if you will, for us.
Right.
Like a hometown show. That was amazing. And then last night we played Tempe, and it was really incredible as well. So this show is already sold out.
Right.
Here at the Sunshine Theater.
Yeah.
I went inside earlier. It's cool. It's an old theater.
Yeah.
Looks like it's been here for a long time,
It has
actually.
been. Yeah.
And
It's over 100 years old, that building.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So really cool. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Went in the bathroom, took care of some business. Sorry. But I looked around the rest of the venue, and I was like, this is a cool old theater. So tonight should be great.
Very nice. Very nice. We're looking forward to it. So you guys haven't toured in a while. You did have the brand new album. Well, it's already a couple years old now. Punching the Sky on Metal Blade Records.
Correct.
It was released in 2020 during
Correct.
the whole pandemic and everything. So you're kind of partially touring for that, but what else is going on?
Yeah, partially touring for that, partially touring for the 40th anniversary, if you will.
Yeah.
Obviously, Wasp is doing their 40th anniversary tour as well, and they haven't toured hardly at all in the last 15 to 18 years in America.
Right.
So I think there's a real big buzz on seeing Wasp because it's, they haven't played in a long time. And even though Armored Saint has toured for the most part over the last 5 to 8 years, fairly consistent, we obviously have played Albuquerque one of the venues,
Right.
one of the cities. So I think there's various reasons why this is happening tonight and on Halloween.
On Halloween.
So we're all excited.
Very cool. So you also have the Symbol of Salvation live, and are you also incorporating some of that into this tour?
Well, we're kind of mixing around the set. We played 3 shows, and we change the set every night so far. I think tonight might be the same as last night. Finally,
Okay.
Gonzo gets a little grumpy with me sometimes because I have a tendency to always want to change the set around. I don't know why. I'm annoying like that, I guess. But I just like to change things around sometimes. Can be kind of, like I said, annoying for somebody who's like, what? We just learned that song, and now I got to learn this one. Just kind of funny. But I think it's just going to be like a classic kind of greatest hits, if you will, say, plus a couple new songs,
cool.
Because we haven't played any of those songs from Punch to the Sky, and they're great.
Yeah,
so
it's a fantastic album.
Thank you very much.
Really
We're
is.
real proud of it.
I was talking to somebody last night, and I was at a local show, and I was like, Armored Saint has never put out a boring or a bad album, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And not blowing no smoke. Every album, and when you think about the early years, you guys, your sound was just really developing, so you finally get to something like Symbol of Salvation and Revelations and all those albums that came. Even when you think about La Raza, just the development of the songs from that time period, you guys never jumped on any trend, which is cool. I don't think, I never considered you a thrash band. I think you were a heavy metal band that kind of took the torches from Iron Maiden and Judas Priest into a newer generation and always maintained that. But your skill level of writing was just phenomenal. So tell us about those 40 years.
Well, I mean, that's very kind of you. I mean, it's funny because we really weren't a part of any real scene, for better or worse. And, we started in the early 80s in LA, obviously. So we were part of that movement with bands like Wasp and, Black and Blue and Steeler and, Rat and Great White. Played with all those bands. And it was great. We always had great shows with them. But we still weren't completely like a hair band from LA.
Right.
Because we were a little bit more tailor-made into the bluesy hard rock vibes of bands like UFO and the Scorpions and Priest and Sabbath, of course, but and Aerosmith, you name it. We always kind of were a little bit more bluesy, but we were still powerful and heavy. I think we sounded like a band that wanted to sound like we were from England, but we were from LA.
Yeah.
So, we weren't a thrash band, but we could play songs like Madhouse and March of the Same, which were pretty heavy rockin' songs.
Right.
So we did kind of have a little bit of an inferiority complex, I say, through the years, because we didn't really fit into one scene specifically, and it created a slight inferiority complex for us, not like too deep, but I think that we were like, well, we're heavy, but we're not with Metallica and Slayer and Anthrax. We play with Rat and Wasp and Great White, but we're not really like those bands either, but we're from LA. So what are we? And I think that kind of was a problem for a while as far as identity. It wasn't until about Symbol where we finally said, we don't care. We're just going to write whatever comes natural to us. If it's a ballad, great. If it's bluesy, it's great because we can do that. If it's heavy, great. If it's soulful, that's our trip. It was that record that I think we finally just didn't really care anymore. And that's why maybe that record is kind of deemed our cornerstone album. And then I think after that kind of opened the door for us to just say, we don't care. And then that's been kind of our philosophy since then, of like, we can do whatever we want. We really feel like we can, within limits. I mean, like I always joke, we're not going to like try to do the, trip hop, bluegrass folk Saint record and go, this is Saint.
Right.
You guys, right?
Yeah.
We're not, our origins are in hard rock heavy metal, and we know that. But that being said, we feel like we can do very many things with that and be as broad as we possibly can. And now we feel real good about our identity.
That's good, because I oftentimes have, felt that you were criminally underrated in terms of the mainstream, say, with, the contemporary acts that maybe, like Metallica, who, shot up, and they might be an outlier because they're so unique in their own way. I know you guys had a great connection with them. You were offered an opportunity to play with them, all of that stuff. But again, along the lines of being kind of criminally underrated, you also are very universally respected, by the fans, by the media,
Yeah,
by other bands.
I think so too. And I always say you can't really worry about the successes, financial, those things. I mean, because if it eludes you, then you're gonna judge your quality and your performances and what you've released based on that, and that's not fair
Right.
to yourself. So you want to just say you control what you can. You make sure you have quality in everything you do, from performances to records to songwriting, and then once that happens, you let go. That's what I do. Once we make a record, and if I believe in it, I let go.
Right.
Whatever happens, it's not going to determine what I think is quality.
Right.
And I feel real good about that because, I mean, there's a lot of amazing records that people don't know of. There's a lot of really horrible records that are massive.
Right.
So it's just not fair to judge it based on numbers.
Yeah.
And I think that in the world of heavy metal and hard rock, Armored Saint gets a lot of critical acclaim. So I don't think people really judge that too harshly about the success level. We probably are maybe bigger than we ever were. 40 years later,
Yeah.
59 years old.
Yeah.
Hey, it's kind of like a cruel kind of twist of fate, but that's life.
Right.
We embrace it all, and we're happy to be here. And the beauty of Armored Saint as well is that, other than Dave, who died obviously in 1990, excuse me, it's the same guys.
Yeah.
It really is the same band
Yeah.
members,
Yeah.
And I think there's a real specialness to that.
Right. Right. Yeah, you brought up Dave, and he was one of my segued perfectly because Dave was amazing, and his untimely passing was a shock. You guys still kept going, although sort of under duress. You had done what, 4 albums with Chrysalis, or 3? 3, and then you left that label, and kind of things were looking like, all right, this might not, this band might not continue anymore, and that would have been unfortunate because then you come back with Symbol of Salvation, you go back to Metal Blade, you seem like you were happier there, the band seems like it just rolled there, and subsequently you've been with them since.
Well, there was the little 12, 13-year period I was in Anthrax.
Oh, that's that. Yeah, right.
But yes,
That long? Yeah, you were with them that long?
I was there, well, just a little under 13 years, I think. So off and on, obviously. But yeah, we did make Revelation in that time when Charlie and Scott went and made SOD record, and then we made Revelation, then we came back and we made We've Come For You All record, in Anthrax. But it was funny when we made those 3 records with Chrysalis. By the time we got Raising Fear done, toured for it, and got dropped, we were still only about 24 years old, all of us.
Jeez.
So we were so young, and at that point you're like, you're done, and like we weren't even 25 yet.
Yeah.
So technically we were scared. We were done,
Yeah.
but obviously there was a lot of road left ahead. But the road is just windy, and you never know what's going to happen, and you just kind of embrace all the moments, the pluses and the minuses, and to be around 40 years later it's pretty miraculous, really. So,
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I love that about metal bands. Some of them had a hiatus for 20 years, but because the movement is so big again, and it's because it's a universal music that everybody, every walk of life, I don't care if you're in Iran or Japan or Antarctica, if you have a basement and you have a guitar, you're going to start a rock or metal band because it's the fun, it's an outlet, and that's what you guys have provided, but you have done it so well. And I can't overstate how much Armored Saint was integral into that whole scene.
Yeah, I think so too. I kind of make the joke that I'll probably be a lot more famous once I die, which is okay. I'm not trying to be like, woe is me. It's kind of a joke to some degree. But like, you embrace those moments. They don't always come the way you think they're going to come. So you just kind of roll with it and embrace the times. Here we are. This tour is doing amazing. We've had tons of sellouts already. Who would have thought that us and Was are going to be touring? We played the Troubadour together in 1983.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Blackie was showing me a ticket from the Troubadour, October 30th, 1983.
Oh, damn.
Okay? Um, so technically it was 39 years ago,
Jeez.
October 30th, and then here we are playing, 39 years later in Tempe, Arizona, with Wasp, having this great show. I mean, kudos to all of us.
Right,
so
right.
It's pretty cool.
I was 13 in '83, so I remember getting the first EP, and I remember everybody was just a buzz about it, And here, if you found something like that at a record store, you bought it before everybody else did, and then you waited to order it. Like it took a couple of months and everything. And I remember looking at the back, and you guys had the metal gear, and then March of the Saint came out, and Can You Deliver, kind of like the video single, and everything. And I remember looking at you guys and thinking to myself, how important it was to see guys like you up on stage that were Chicano, Latino, La Raza.
Yeah.
You guys were from Pasadena,
Well, technically we're from El Sereno, which is in
okay.
East LA. But we play Pasadena mostly. So at one point we kind of said we're from Pasadena, but technically we all grew up in this little enclave of Los Angeles called El Sereno, which is primarily Latino, 90%, 85% Latino neighborhood. And Gonzo, Phil, and Joey and I grew up about a quarter-mile radius from one another. Joey was a block over, like a block and a block over from my house. Gonzo and Phil were 4 blocks away the other way. So that is the area that we grew up. As a matter of fact, somebody was telling me the other day, they heard an interview with me, and I said because I graduated from South Pasadena High School, I changed schools, and I said we were from South Pass, and these couple people were from El Sereno were like brokenhearted and shattered that I said that, and I was like, oh my goodness, oh no. I said there was a period of time we said that, but really, we always say now that we give the true story is that we were from El Sereno. Just a lot of people wouldn't know where that is,
right?
But it is a part of East LA. Right? It's just its own little enclave of East LA.
And I bring that up because, I think culturally, like we were talking about metal, it crosses all barriers, all lines. It doesn't matter where you're from. But it was important for guys like me to see that, because when we saw that, we were like, we can make it just like those guys. We could thrash out and be heavy just like those guys. And we would look up to you like our little brothers, like you were our older brothers, and we'd be like, yeah, man, check out the Saints.
We were a little ahead of our time. It's real hip to be, Latin or,
Right.
But we were a little ahead of our time probably, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, we've always kind of incorporated a little bit of that into our sound, even if it's subtle. Gonzo plays with a real soulful kind of Latin style. We always joke that the rhythm of Last Train Home is actually like a salsa beat, really. So, it kind of it finds its way into our songwriting a little bit here and there when it's when it's natural, when it feels not forced. But we've embraced that. I mean, I'm a white boy, but I grew up around. Most of my friends were Latino growing up because that was the area I grew up in,
right.
And it's a cool aspect of our band for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I bring it up, and I have such a high respect and high regard for your band for that. Like I said, because you were the older brothers we didn't have. We were looking up to you guys, and everybody in Albuquerque was trying to do that kind of thing. Everybody in Texas, all across the world, when they saw you guys and the way you exploded and the passion that you guys had, the drive, the hunger, and you guys still carry that, because I think that if you listen to your albums, you could tell when somebody's mailing it in versus somebody who's got passion, and Punching the Sky has a lot of passion.
It does. I'm real proud of that album, and Win Hands Down as well. We don't want to just be a band who kind of rests on the laurels of look, I love 1985. I love 1984, but I don't live there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't live there. So I want to make music that has the same integrity that I feel like those records do now, and still has the same Armored Saint style, but sounds like a record that came out now. And I think we do that. I think the songs sound like vintage Saint, but it sounds like modern Saint. And it's not easy to do that. It's very tricky. You can ask my peers how hard that is to do from anybody, whether it's Metallica, Overkill, Anthrax, to Wasp, Rat, to shoot new wave bands, to U2, like you name it, bands who are from that era to still make music that sounds viable now, 40 years later, where it doesn't feel like you're going, we can make a record so we can tour. It doesn't matter how good the quality of it is. I'm not saying everybody does it. Some people do. But to me, I don't want to do it for that reason. I want to make a really great record and challenge myself as a writer and as as a musician to make the best thing we can make now. And then we can go out and play songs and play live, and we're always going to be able to play March of the Scene and Long Before I Die, whatever. But when we play these new songs, and you'll see tonight, it feels great, and it feels now, and it feels current, and it bridges really well with the old stuff. So I think it works perfectly.
We were scheduled to talk to Joey, so Joey Vera. So
you got me instead.
Oh, hey man, we're elated, and we watch you every week, every Friday. We watch Metal Mayhem on MTV Classics.
That's hilarious.
And that's our date night. And
that's your date night?
That's our date
night.
Not
dinner or something?
No, 4 hours of me smoking and her watching it. And I introduce all of you guys to her and to my girlfriend Andrea, who's behind the camera, and we watch. She loves the Anthrax stuff that you do, which is awesome. And we always see the video with the cow. I forget the one. With
Nothing.
There you go. Yeah. So I mean, it's just fantastic to see all of that. And I think again, the newer audiences, the younger kids when they see you guys, are going to feel exactly the way we did in '82 and '83. Because that was a special and a remarkable time.
Well, the beauty of getting older is that you have kids, and then those kids get the music passed down to them, and it lives forever. It really does. I won't, but the music will, and so it keeps getting passed down to other generations, and that's a great thing. It's like classical music almost.
It is. To me, metal is about the closest thing to classical music, because there's so many variations. It's complex. Everybody thinks it's 3 chords and loud.
Oh no, come on, listen to Yngwie, man. He listened to a lot of Mozart and
man,
Beethoven.
There's a ton. I mean, I think even your band has some complex structures and styles at times.
Sure.
And it's like, whoa, there's no way.
There's some jazz in there.
You can't cover that easily. You know what I mean? It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And I want to go back again, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be stuck in '83, but I did talk to Bill Metoyer a little bit. He told me to give Joey Vera a kiss on the lips, but he really said, he really wanted to express his love and affinity for you guys as friends first before the band, and I thought that was really cool. And he told me a couple funny things that went down when you guys were doing the EP. Then he took over and engineered the live album.
He also engineered. He did the mixing on Revelation as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I mean,
and we recorded guitars on When Hands Down at his house, and we still would have worked with Bill in different ways through the years too.
He's amazing. He
was there in the very first when we had to call him up and go, Bill, we're running late. We got to pick up some opium for the session. It's like, what? Okay, we're 19.
Yeah.
We're at Curran Kegs, those cool Curran Keg beers.
Nice.
And we were 19 or maybe even 18 when we did our first EP. Well, that was the demo.
Right.
And Bill was the engineer. Track Record, Melrose.
Track Records, he brought that up. And this is what is so crazy to me. Again, we're talking about your influence. We're talking about Metal Blade, a label that, I read the book. I went to the museum before it was open. And I bought some stuff. That's where I got the flask. And I think about Brian Slagle and his work involved to get that thing going. And then 40 years of your music just is, that's an important part of musical history that I don't think people really, really understand how crucial it was.
Well, and it leads in a lot of people's lives. That's the cool thing, man. You're going to meet different people, have different paths, and they're all going to cross and intersect. And, whether they're engineers or agents or managers or other bands, of course, promoters, obviously fans, journalists, radio personalities. I mean, we know so many people through the years, and it's really cool. It's a cool community, the metal world. It's funny. It's a little nerdy. It's a little nerdy, even though it doesn't look nerdy because it has the tough imagery.
Right.
But it's a little nerdy, and it's very loyal.
Yeah.
As long as you're loyal.
Right.
I mean, the metalheads will be loyal to the grave, but if they feel like you're turning their back on, if you're not loyal back, then you'll be shunned.
Oh, we're a cynical bunch for sure, and
very cynical,
very sensitive,
and very prove it to me, which is fine. That's just the way it is. But it is a very loyal community.
How would you, in one line, state Armored Saint's impact on the metal community?
Wow. Well, I think the one thing that we always kind of strove for was longevity. So we accomplished that. As I said, you know, we all had these expectations that we were all going to take over the world, and then the reality was only Metallica was really going to do it. But we all wanted the same, you know, objective. Um, but I think again, as I said before, not to be redundant, you want to control the things you can control, and that is the quality of what you do. Because everything else, your fame is not something that you can, you know, there's no guarantee of that. Of course, the majority of bands will not accomplish that. Very few actually are very famous of all the bands that were there. I remember going to Chrysalis Records and opening up the bins where all the records. They go, oh, go get some records. We're like, cool. Open up the bins. We're like, what are these bands? Never even heard of these bands. Well, Spandau Ballet probably did the same thing, and it's Armored Saint. Yeah. Who's that? You know, you knew who Huey Lewis, Billy Idol, Pat Benatar, of course, right. Jethro Tull. The joke is that for all the bands, for all the labels that put out records, very few actually are successful, and that goes for all genres. So you, again, going back to controlling the things you can and being genuine to yourself. It takes a while. When we were 21, we thought we knew everything. As time goes by, you realize that you have a lot to learn. We were lucky to start when we were really young. So I'm 59, still not doing too bad. Lost my hair, still got the voice. For the most part, it's hanging tough. You know, feels pretty physically fit. A little worked after 3 shows. But, you know, we've got it. We've got this, like, conviction. You'll see tonight when we play, it feels very honest. And I think that's one of the key things. Musically, it's not for me to kind of determine that. I think that'll be for the fans to figure out where we stand in the history of heavy metal. I certainly don't want to go, this is where we stand. And that's right. That's for them to decide. Right. Again, most important thing I think is just to be as honest as possible.
Right. And that's interesting you brought that up, because when I did have that conversation with Bill, and we're going to use what I talked to him as bonus footage, and it's all about you.
Oh,
guys.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's like a 15-minute interview. I also got some Francis Ruiz from Buckcherry, the drummer, because he's friends with Gonzo. And
that's great.
I think you might know him. I'm not sure. But you know, he brought in a little bit. He was talking to me about some of the experiences that he had with Armored Saint living out in LA. He was the kid that made it out of Albuquerque. And
that's great.
We were like, yeah, Francis, yeah. So it's interesting to look back and to, you know, all of that foundation again. I think is just key history. It's a lot of fun and a lot of great memories. I know that Armored Saint right now is touring. How many more dates you got with Wasp? A couple more months?
I mean, it's 30. I think it was 34, 35 shows total. Okay. So we've only done 3.
So what are you going to do after? I know Joey Vera is moving on to Merciful Fate, and is that still happening?
Well, it is still happening. Joey's been playing with Merciful Fate, and I think that's open-ended. I don't know what they're planning for next year exactly. They're touring right now with a replacement bass player. As a matter of fact, we played LA. Well, we played Anaheim, they played LA. It was pretty funny. Oh, wow. I was like, dude, you could drive and still do a song. Do both. Our plan is to go to Europe next year because we love Europe. That's a huge fan base for Armored Saint, and we love going there. And we have a couple things in the works that I can't talk about quite yet because they're not solidified. But it is our goal to go to Europe for sure next year. And I've already drawn up like 25, 30 dates of shows we could do with Wasp here in America and Canada that we wouldn't even play on this tour. So I planted the seed, and so is our agent Dan DeVita, who actually books both bands, of cities that we could play, not even any on this tour, for another leg with this. So if everything goes great and the shows keep doing well and the vibes are awesome, there's no reason why we can't do another leg with Wasp next year at some point. I don't know when. I'd love to go to South America with Wasp. I'd love to go to Japan with Wasp and Australia. And of course, it gets a little more difficult playing those places with 2 bands because everything is a lot more costly. But these are my lofty goals for 23.
Okay, very cool. I want to ask you this is a personal question. I'm sure you get it all the time. What was it like playing with an East Coast powerhouse like Anthrax? You were a West Coast powerhouse, East Coast powerhouse. You know, hip hop, rock, every type of genre that's from New York and LA has their set of unique style. Yet you were able to combine them both, and you made some crushing albums with Anthrax. I really thought that was a really cool period. I love Joey Belladonna. I love Bill Turbin. I love all of Anthrax's body work, but I thought that what you guys did was really cool. At first, I kind of, I'll admit, at that time, you know, being a cynical young metalhead, I was like, what? Can't go to Anthrax? It's so crazy.
Right.
But when you did it, it was badass.
There's an adjustment to make. I mean, I have those adjustments as a fan as well. You know, when Bon Scott died, or even when Ronnie James Dio took over for Ozzy.
Right.
There's an adjustment. And I had to certainly make the adjustment. Following Joey Belladonna was no easy task, let me tell you. But I think it was the 90s, and we kind of ushered in this whole new decade. And Sound of White Noise was a record probably a little ahead of its time, actually. Crazy, because that record is 30 years next year. Just insane. That's a humbling reality of my age. But
mine as well.
But I mean, I think we made some really amazing records. Those guys are incredible players, writers. I love them all. You know, we had some time when we got a little distant. It's like a breakup. You know, sometimes you have to go through a little time where you have to part ways for a while, and then it kind of resumes, hopefully.
Right.
And it has. And you know, I admire those guys. I mean, Anthrax has pushed the boundaries constantly in music. Did things that weren't always something that people could guarantee was going to be successful.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm the man. In the middle of the 80s with thrash, there was no way that everybody was going to say that's going to be a hit, but it was. Then Bring the Noise. You know, doing something like Toast to the Extras, which was a country song on Volume 8. Like, whether I was in the band or not in the band, they've always pushed the boundaries of taking a chance, pushing their fan base, and challenging the fan base. And I think that's the beauty of Anthrax. You know, I really respect them for doing that. You know, they just didn't always play it safely. And it's not a guarantee when you do that.
Right.
But it's again, challenging the fan base. And you know, commemorate, that's a given. You know, it's going to work. But doing something like On the Man is not. And so I think that was always real admirable that they were willing to do those kind of things before I was in the band. And when I was in the band, we talked about trying to do different things. Black Lodge, you know, was using Angelo Paolo Demente, who was doing the music for Twin Peaks. It's like, we're going to get him in there, and he's going to do all this orchestration.
Yeah.
Okay, that's risky, but it was really cool.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee that's going to be all the fans are going to love it. It's taking those chances, and that's what I really love with that Anthrax.
I saw a post from Joey Belladonna on his Facebook page, and he had, I think there was a picture of you and him together. And
we took a shot recently when they played.
Yeah, and I had posted on there, you know, two greats, and I really thought that was really cool that to see you guys together, and you know, that core of the Anthrax vocalists and all that Anthrax body work. Of course, notwithstanding the Bill Turbin, you know, Fistful of Metal,
right?
But
for sure,
that was so long ago, you know, it's crazy. But yeah, your work with Anthrax was really cool.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes it falls under the radar, and that's life. You know, Anthrax is an '80s success. It's you can't really compete with it. I mean, it's hard enough when I was in Anthrax to compete with all the other bands. I had to compete with my own band, which is not an easy thing to do. It's understandable, but you know, I have the utmost respect for Joey. He's a unique singer. You know, his identity is, you know, just entrenched in that world, and great. You know, he has a unique voice, like I said, and you know, he's a nice guy. Sometimes people want to create this kind of rivalry, and it really isn't there.
Yeah.
I always say you can like both. I mean, there's no greater record to me than Paranoid, but maybe Heaven and Hell. Like, you can like both. You don't have to go, I like this, I don't like that. Right. You can like both. Right. If you don't, that's fine. Yeah. But you can.
No, I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that.
Back in Black is as good as Highway to Hell. It just is, man. You know, so.
Gotta ask you, what happened to the old suits that you guys had? I know you ditched them pretty much after March of the Saint.
Oh no, we actually upgraded and got stuff made by this company called Western Costume, which makes a lot of stuff for a lot of the movies. It's a big warehouse and prop house that makes stuff for movies. I think it still exists. And once we got a little more money, and then they made us some stuff for Delirious Nomad, and it actually looked worse. I mean, I look back on that fondly because it was what we thought was cool at the time. It was a pain in the ass to put that crap on in the winter when it was wet and cold and it wouldn't dry, and we were in Buffalo, New York, going, oh my God, I gotta put this on. I always, tell the story of, I did a whole tour where my ass was literally blue from the pants because the dye was on my butt and it wouldn't go away.
Oh.
My whole butt was blue for the tour.
Yikes.
No matter how much I washed it. It's funny. But I look back and I think it was cool at the time.
Yeah.
After a while, it became a slight albatross around our neck because we didn't want to be viewed as this image band, because we really weren't. I mean, I always say that really Armored Saint is like a garage band. That's where we started, and that's kind of our trip. As tight as we can be a little loose, and I like it.
Yeah.
We can make mistakes. I kind of like it. When everything is perfect these days, with Pro Tools and everything, if I hit a sour note, it's live. There's a couple parts where the tempo fluctuates. I like it. I like the feeling that it feels live. So I don't have a problem with that. And that's kind of our origin. So, the image was great. It was fun. I was happy to be done with it. I mean, come on, we changed a lot.
Right.
Joey's hairdo is not like mine. Gonzo, Phil, and Jeff still got the hairless bastards, but I'm envious of them. But it's great. Any period of time with Saint is something I always look back fondly on.
Right. When I see those suits, I used to think that
I don't know where they are. Well, actually, we have some of them because we
cool.
did this cool thing, the Metal Blade 30th anniversary, which is cool because they just have the 40th anniversary.
Right.
And at the 30th anniversary, Joey and I got these wigs that were at Hollywood Toys and Costume, which is a famous costume store on Hollywood Boulevard, which I'm sure is going bananas today. And we dug out a lot of the same stuff. I think Phil had some stuff. Jeff even made some things that kind of looked like what we wore back then. I had my white leather vest that I still got. So we wore it for that show. And it was really cool. And I wore the wig, and so did Joey. And then I took it off after a song, and people were booing.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm not wearing the wig the whole show.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
That would
But it was fun, and I'm sure that's up on YouTube. You can probably find it.
Again, the suits reminded me, when I first saw them as a kid, I was like, oh, like armored suits, like knights in shining armor, all that. And then when I watched the video a couple of weeks ago, I was like, those suits look more like the Road Warrior, almost like Mad Max.
It was a cross between Road Warrior and armor. Some of the stuff, like Joey took stuff off telephone pole reflectors, and he would put it on there, and so did I. We had some of it was like shin guards that were like soccer shin guards that we decorated. I wore one thing that I wore was like, I think in the movie The Beastmaster, if you look at that movie, a bunch of the guys have the same breastplate that I had on. So it was from various different sources. And I remember one time we got a review and said that we looked like Planet of the Apes, which I think we were a little offended at the time. I don't know why, because we love Planet of the Apes. It should have been a compliment, but it was kind of said derogatory. But, again, it was just a part of our time. And we loved the image bands. We loved Kiss and Alice Cooper and Queen and bands that had these big images. And so we kind of wanted to follow in those footsteps. So obviously Priest. And then after a while, we were like, okay, now we're done with that. So.
Oh, man, it does not get any better than this. We've been joined by one of the best in the business, one of the best bands, I think, in metal history, in hard rock history, and in all of music. It doesn't get no better than this, really, because your music has stood the test of time. It's always been creative. As I've gotten older and I've listened more recently to the more recent lyrics, are more introspective, and I can kind of relate to that, but yet they don't show no signs of like, oh, you're preachy or weird or anything like that. You are simply Armored Saint, and I cannot thank you enough, Mr. John Bush, for
thank you very much.
Today.
Appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Thanks, dude. And we finally, we met maybe back in the day.
Maybe,
but now we've met again.
Now it's official.
So thanks for all the kind words, and thanks for all the support.
Anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to convey?
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we did.
Well, again, I want to thank you. And again, if you missed this show, I don't know what else to tell you, but this is Armored Saint, and stand by for some bonus footage that we have. And again, I want to thank Mr. John Bush and everybody involved, Liz over at Near Split and management, all of that good stuff for making this happen. We are very appreciative. Thanks again.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So one of the reasons why we're talking to you today is Armored Saint. We want to kind of just get a feel for what you had as far as an experience with Armored Saint. Of course, Metal Blade celebrating 40 years, Armored Saint celebrating 40 years. You're a part of that 40 years and some in terms of production, being involved. You're a legend and a pioneer in heavy metal, thrash metal, all subgenres. I know you don't like to hear it, but we as metal fans do appreciate. We know your name, we hear your stuff. For somebody like myself, it's been that long as well. I was in middle school when Armored Saint first came out, and they were a very integral band because I always thought they were very. They weren't a thrash band; they were just a straight up heavy metal band. Um, Tell us your experience with them, and let's go back to those early days because you produced the first EP, which only had 3 songs, but that set the stage for this band growing up to being one of the monoliths in heavy metal.
Yeah, this is true. I'm interested in what is it about Armored Saint that has you so intrigued about them? And yeah, I want to hear the fans' point of view first before I say anything.
Cool, I appreciate
What
that.
drew you to the band?
Well, the first thing that drew me to the band, I bought the EP as a kid. There was a lot of buzz. Here in Albuquerque, we weren't getting a lot of those shows. They did eventually come to Albuquerque. They played with Metallica, that big infamous tour for Ride the Lightning. But I think one of the things for me about Armored Saint, got a couple of things. I'm Latino, Chicano. That kind of drew me to them coming out of Pasadena, California, and I knew a lot of bands and a lot of musicians in metal at that time, guys like Sandy Kay and Earl Mendenhall from Bloodlust, and guys like Savage Grace, a lot of bands that were on Metal Blade. So one of the things, like I said, that intrigued me about Armored Saint was they were a heavy band, but they were a fun band. They weren't preachy, they weren't weird, they were just heavy. They rocked out, but they took it to another level. And when that EP came out, we were like, wow, those 3 songs, that's not enough from these guys. And then subsequently, they came out with Saints, March of the Saint, and then, the 3 albums that were on Chrysalis, and then they went back to Metal Blade. So I think overall, they were just solid. Kind of, they were taking the torch and carrying it on from bands like Judas Priest and metal bands like that. And I think that's what I found that's so intriguing about them. And they never, for lack of a better term, they never pussed out. They never followed a trend. They never did anything. They just kept putting out album after album that was just heavy metal, and that was all it was.
Amen. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said that they were kind of carrying the metal flag there. I mean, Hell Bent for Leather. They played that all of their early shows here in Los Angeles. So, it's how could you not fall in love with those guys? They were young, they were up there having fun, and more than anything, just playing some damn good music.
Yeah, yeah. They had a certain intensity about them. They started out wearing the suits. I know that was kind of a thing to separate themselves from the crowd, and at that time, we appreciated that as metal fans. But they kind of, I think they outgrew that. But again, their chops grew. They had some tremendous musicians. The Sandoval brothers, both Phil and Gonzo, incredible. Joey Vera, John Bush, one of the best vocalists of metal. That just, I mean, he set the standard. Of course, at that time they had Dave Pritchard before he passed away. But you worked on that first EP. You set forth you kind of were the launching ground as well as Metal Blade Records. And I've been doing a lot of research on how Brian Slagle had done work with those guys and how he got them going. And it was just some of a remarkable timing for metal at that time. That was like the burgeoning scene of metal, and then every subgenre subsequently came afterwards.
This is true, especially here in Los Angeles. I mean, when you think about how many of those early metal bands came out of Los Angeles, that the scene was just happening back then. I mean, you think about bands like Rat, Wasp, even you got to throw in Poison, even though that was the hair metal days. But the thing about Armored Saint when they first started is the energy. I mean, besides being good musicians and putting on incredible shows, I mean, their energy was always great.
Right. What do you remember about working on that very first EP? I know where I'm taking you back to the time machine, and it's hard to
Boy,
remember.
are you 43. I mean, I'm 62 years old, so you're talking 40 years ago. But you know, way back then, I mean, they were just. I was a kid. I was only 23, when we did that EP. So you got to think about that, number one. So they weren't even old enough to drink, you know. And what happens when you get a heavy metal band that are underaged into the studio? There's going to be a lot of drinking involved, you know.
Right.
So, uh, like I said, I was just a kid myself, and I got to be honest. Back then, being in the studio was just it was fun. It was fun for us back then, you know. When it came to the you press the red button and you start recording, yeah, those guys got very serious. But otherwise, we were in the studio having fun.
They seem very hungry. And I've been there's a book from Metal Blade that came out, and it's called For the Sake of Heaviness, and it's about Brian and how he got Metal Blade going. And there's a story, it's a real short anecdote you had about a couple of things, excuse me, going into that Armored Saint EP. One, they were they were kind of having financial problems because recording at that time was kind of expensive, and so you kind of helped them get on track in terms of being a little bit more economical, recording late at night, things of that nature. You played a big role in getting Armored Saint really off the ground, and I thank you for that. And I'm sure they're pleased about that. But every metal fan owes a great deal of respect to you and both Metal Blade for that work going into that. Do you remember a lot of those sessions, period, or do you just is it still kind of a blur?
Well, there's a few things I remember about a lot of things back then. I mean, yes, when Metal Blade was first starting out, the label didn't have a lot of money. I was just lucky enough to be working at Track Record Studios in those days. And I could come in at midnight when the studio wasn't booked. So the owners didn't really expect a lot of money. So that certainly helped us. That helped a lot of bands in the early days of Metal Blade. I mean, there was sometimes that even the record label couldn't come up with all the money, and sometimes some of the band members had to even chip in. But yeah, there was the early days. It's kind of tough going into a studio at midnight and expecting a band to record anything, you know. But like I said, we were all just a bunch of kids. They had this incredible energy, and it, there wasn't any problems. I mean, like I said, there was some partying going on, but once you press the record button, they got it together, and they did a great job.
So let's fast forward a little bit. They subsequently left Metal Blade. They got signed to Chrysalis Records, which was that was everybody's deal. Get big, get on a major label, and bands like Metallica and Megadeth, they kind of set the standard going to Capitol and Elektra and all these other bands had been watching, say, Iron Maiden, on the EMI and all the labels, Judas Priest, all those bands that were on all of those labels. So Armored Saint, March of the Saint goes to Chrysalis Records. They do Delirious Nomad. They do Raising Fear, and then they got released from the label and back. They went back to Metal Blade to do the live album Saints Will Conquer, and you produced that one as well. Tell us about them leaving Metal Blade and coming back to Metal Blade and your participation in that live album.
Well, I can't. You really can't say that I produced it. I did mix that album, and I got to be honest. I don't know even the circumstances of why it was recorded. I mean, they were just on tour. For all I know, it just happened that the venue that they were at had the facility to actually record them. So they came back off the tour with this live recording, and all I could remember about it is they were just complaining about the drunken sound man that recorded everything. So
Uh,
let's just say those recordings they weren't very good. They sounded pretty bad. So they came to me to try to mix it and make it sound good. So the one thing I remember is any time when you're in that type of situation, when I wasn't in control, I wasn't there recording it, and you get it and things just don't sound good. It's just a lot of work on my part. That's number one. And number two was it was a live record. There's so many problems, things that happen live that just don't happen in the studio. I mean, if you're on stage playing a set and somebody screws up, you can't just stop and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, people. We're recording this, so we got to start that song over again." So there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be little mistakes. Hopefully, things that you don't hear, but majority of live records, sometimes people have to fix things in the studio. But the thing I don't remember getting a chance to fix anything when it comes to that. I mean, when I could be wrong, it was a long time ago, but I don't remember having the luxury of trying to fix anything that happened on that. So that I just remember them complaining about how shitty that the recordings were, and I could only try to do my best to make it sound decent.
Well, damn, you did a hell of a job, because I would have never have recognized or noticed that there was issues. And of course, that's your job. A lot of people don't understand that, as a producer or as an engineer or anything like that on the technical end, that you have to clean it up and you have to, make it sound, give it the quality in order for it to be released. And guys like us soak it in and we're like, wow, that was like incredible. That was just right off. We think that it's right off the board and we think that that's it. And, it's definitely a bigger process. And you think about albums like, what is it from Ozzy Osbourne? Not Diary, the live album that he did right around Live Evil from Black Sabbath, and any one of those live albums, there's a process to it. I'm thinking of Speak of the Devil. There's more to it than just we recorded this and that, because the only time that you record anything off of a tape is if you're bootlegging it, and then you can bootleg it later on, and things aren't the way they are that like they used to be. But yeah, that sounded like it to me. It's a clean album. I love it. It sounds great.
Well, that's they deserve all the praise because they played everything. And like I said, I don't remember having the luxury to fix anything. So it was their performance, I think, that shines more than anything else. And you're right about live records, but I mean, live, most you have to know, most people have to know that when you're doing a live record, sometimes you do have to go back and fix things in the studio, and it certainly happens a lot when it comes to the bigger bands that have the budget to go in and fix things. But like I said, you got to think about it when you are playing live. You can't just stop because somebody made a mistake, like you can do in the studio. In the studio, somebody messes up. It's very simple. You just punch in and fix the mistakes. But you can't stop a live show. So when you get into the studio, yeah, there's a lot of fixing to do, and it's not easy. In fact, it's incredibly difficult because you have to try to match the same sound, for example, so that when you do fix, it doesn't sound different. And there's other things you think about, like all the instruments are playing at the same time. I mean, the lead guitar is bleeding into the kick drum, bleeding into the vocal mic. That's stuff that you can't get rid of. So that mistake that the guitar player made might still be in the singer's microphone, and you fix his mistake, but his mistake you could still hear faintly in the background. So you got to try to figure out a way to duck that so that people don't hear it. And yeah, it's pretty tedious. The live stuff, to me at least, is a lot harder than being in the studio when you have a lot more control. In the studio, everybody does everything one at a time normally. Of course, especially in the early days, yeah, we were doing some recordings where the bands were all playing at the same time, but you had the drummer in one room, you had the guitar player in the corner, and everything is still separated.
Right.
On stage, it's not like that. So it's very different. It's the live shit's hard.
Yeah.
That's the hard stuff.
It seems very rigorous because people expect, hey, I was at that Armored Saint show, this tour, Now the album comes out. Oh, wait a minute, it's not quite the same, but it captured the energy for me. I mean, like I said, I thought it was brilliantly executed. Nothing from Armored Saint has disappointed, to me at least. Again, this is a very integral band as far as I'm concerned in the heavy metal industry or history. And one of the guys, unfortunately, that didn't get to make it through was guitarist Dave Pritchard. He passed away early in his life, unfortunately, and he was able to record that live Armored Saint album. And then once they went back to Metal Blade, he had passed away from cancer. And at that time, they had also been released from Chrysalis, which was also a very rough time for the band because there was kind of a lot of wheels in motion, but they came back. And I thought, Symbol of Salvation, a lot of the stuff they put out with Metal Blade again was just perfect. It was really, really mature for them. And it was really, really fun stuff. And they never gave up. And I think I appreciate that. So the question I want to ask you, what do you remember of Dave Pritchard in those early years prior to him passing, obviously?
Well, the biggest thing was, I mean, all those guys were and still are very good friends of mine. So to me, Dave was my friend that passed away from leukemia. And he was just way too young to leave us that soon. So I don't know, but he was obviously a great guitar player. He helped a lot in the writing when it came to Armored Saint. But when I think about Dave, I just think, hey, my friend died, and he died way, way too early.
I agree with you on that for sure. Lastly, what impact do you think Armored Saint has had on the history of heavy metal? Obviously, I'm telling you how much I feel about them. I'm not sure a lot of people agree. I kind of feel that they've been sort of under the radar. I mean, when you think of bands that they were playing with at the time, their contemporaries were Metallica, and Metallica shot up to be the biggest band in the metal history, pretty much. You think of some of the artists and that have kind of surpassed them, but they've always been solid. And I think to me, their place in heavy metal has really set the stage, I think, for a band that's just solid, good material that they write, as well as a fun, hard working band.
Exactly. But, I don't know if I have an answer for that. I mean, I think they are one of the most underrated bands in heavy metal history. But I mean, when you think about it, after 40 years, they're still around. They're still making some great records. They got to be doing something right. But yeah, I certainly agree that they ought to be a lot bigger than they are. And when it comes to the underground heavy metal scene in Los Angeles, they were in the midst of that. I mean, when you think about the bands that came out of LA at that time, like I said, the Rats, the Wasps, the even bands like Black and Blue and Steeler. I mean, all these bands were getting signed back then. And I mean, Armored Saint's still around,
Yeah, right.
there's a lot of them that aren't. And it's because they kick ass. They
Yeah,
kick ass and they deliver. They you know, they answered their own song. Can you deliver? Yeah, they can deliver.
right,
I
right.
mean, you've seen them live. They are just amazing live. They have great songs, and it'd be nice if we all could stick around for another 40 years. But
Right.
so I'm just proud because, like I said, those guys are they're friends to me. I mean, they're not even just a band that I worked with. They are all friends, especially like Mr. Joey Vera. I mean, he's one of my dearest friends. Uh, they have been in and stayed in my life for 40 years. And, that's just that's the biggest thing to me is that they are friends. They're all nice guys. And again, I think of Armored Saint. Forgive me, the music comes second. The first thing I think about is they're my friends.
Nice, nice. Well, real quickly, I got one more quick question, and there was an anecdote also in the book, "For the Sake of Heaviness," where you told a story about a late night recording session that subsequently kind of turned into a party, and there was the dog pile, and on the bottom of the dog pile, and the dog pile is where everybody piles up on each other, all drunk, all crazy, stoned. We used to do stupidities like that all the time. And who was it? It was Phil Sandoval got his leg damaged, not broken, but he got it hurt, and he had to play a set with him sitting on a chair. What other crazy story do you have of Armored Saint when you were in those days recording with those guys?
Well, the dog pile actually happened at a party, and I'm pretty sure the party was at Betsy Bitch's house. I thank God there were no dog piles in the studio itself, but when it came to Armored Saint, like I said, I was just a kid. I was only 23. None of them were drinking age. So if they weren't doing the recording, yeah, there was a lot of drinking. Like I said, we were starting at friggin' midnight. So if they weren't actually recording, there was drinking going on. They were trying to have fun. By the time, we did everything. We had to do everything very quickly back in those days. So I think we recorded everything in probably 2 days, and then maybe a week later came back and did the mixing. But again, very late night, a lot of drinking going on. I do remember, I think when it did come to the mixing, there might have been a little more than beer around for that night.
Right.
And I just remember mixing, and at first everyone's excited, having fun, drinking a lot, and as the night went on, things got quieter and quieter. And I remember towards the end of the mix job, I go, "Okay, guys, well, what do you think? How does it sound?" And didn't really hear anything. I turn around behind me and I look, and they're all just passed out on the floor. And I go, "Guys, what do you think?" I hear a couple of grunts, and a couple of guys are face down. You just see their thumbs go up, and that's about it. But again, all kids, all of us were kids, and the most things that I remember about those early days is being in the studio was fun. It was fun,
Nice.
and yeah, I think we all had fun doing that EP.
All right. Well, Bill, thank you very much for some of your memories of Armored Saint. I really appreciate it. We're going to have a lot of fun. Of course, Joey Vera is our featured guest on the Zero Hour Squared Classics, and we are going to talk about 40 years of Armored Saint, 40 years of Metal Blade, 40 years of just insanity that I've been a part of just as a listener and a fan. And I really appreciate you taking your time on a football Sunday to do this with me.
That's cool. Do you actually you're going to talk to Joey live, or do you
Yeah.
have to do anything? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be my first in-person interview in quite since the pandemic. Most of my interviews have been, on Zoom. But yeah, I will be interviewing them tomorrow, and I'm scheduled to talk to Joey. They're opening up for Wasp, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Do me a favor, give him a kiss for me, because I love that man. Like I said, he's one of my dearest friends in the world. So,
We'll
and
do.
have fun at the show, man. You'll have to let me know how it goes.
Awesome. We'll do. All right, joining us right now to talk some Armored Saint metal is a drummer from Albuquerque, New Mexico, Mr. Francis Ruiz from Buckcherry. Fran, man, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks again, man, for having me. We're just, as you can see, all the stuff behind me. I'm just right in the middle of rehearsing. We're coming up on the Kiss cruise in a few days. So, and the crazy thing is, right after the Kiss cruise, we're going straight off the ship, flying to Nashville and recording the new record too. So I'm in the middle of trying to learn all my parts for the songs that we're going to record and stuff. And we don't get together, and this is my pre-production. We don't sit all together in a rehearsal room and hack it out. It's just like basically everybody kind of does their own thing, and then we come together and make it happen. So
okay, how does that work out? I mean, you don't get together on line or anything. What do? You just play the tracks? Is that how you do it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Stevie and Josh basically get together and write the stuff, and and they did some Marty Fredrickson, who's going to be producing this record again. He produced the last record, and came up with basically demos. And then so they send me the demos. I got this cool app that I could basically take those demos and take out the guitar, take out the bass, take out the drums, take out vocals if I want, manipulate it, so I could play along with it and just really work out my stuff. And you can see it's an electronic kit, just kind of bizarre, but it allows me to pump the tracks into my ears,
right,
and the audio, and take out the parts that I don't want, and then I hear like the studio sound when I'm actually rehearsing, instead of just this loud bashing away and stuff like that. So I could really focus in on my parts. So it's kind of cool.
Man,
technology nowadays, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing how technology has kind of, well, how it's grown and how it dictates all that. I mean, people were recording stuff in the pandemic from different places, but I mean, like now I'm able to talk to so many more people than waiting to do an in-person when they come in through town, when waiting 6-7 months. You know,
right.
Now I can just call somebody up and say, hey man, can we do an interview via Zoom? I don't know where you're at, let's do it. So I mean, that's what's the beauty of this.
And come straight to their house or a rehearsal studio or whatever you want, you know. So
exactly. Real quickly, to touch on what Buckcherry is doing, how many more months now are you planning to get ready to go on the road for?
Well, we're going to end in December. Right now, we're going to go do 3 shows on the Kiss Cruise, and that's going to be cool. Black Label Society buddies of mine, you know, are also on that, and Stryper and Sebastian Bach and a whole bunch of other bands, Pisto Blanco, cool. Chuck Garrick from Alice Cooper's band, and
nice,
and a whole bunch of great stuff. Some other, you know, a lot of friends on that ship, so it's going to be cool, and we're going to do that. Then, like I said, we're going to go straight into the studio to record, and that's going to be until about November 11th. It's when my time will be in Nashville. So, and then we got another few weeks off, and then we're going to do another tour of Australia and New Zealand with us and Fozzy. So Chris
cool.
Jericho. Yeah. So those guys are killing it, man. I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
Fozzy has been working quite a bit, like you guys. That's a great combination right there. It's a great tour.
Yeah, and their music's doing great on the on radio and stuff like that. So it's like they I'm excited for the tour. You know, I like their stuff too. So it's really cool. And all the guys seem really super cool, and so excited about that. And then we got some makeup shows after that, and then we're pretty much done. And until the record comes out, I would take a little bit of time off the road because we've been hitting it so hard. We've already done 119 shows this year, and so by the time we're done, it'll be right around 130, something like that.
Okay. Albuquerque, is that going to be one of the dates that's going to be remade?
No. Unfortunately, we have to we rescheduled some of the dates that we canceled around that same time that we were supposed to come to Albuquerque, but they were like California and Arizona, so it's just kind of hard to come all the way to Albuquerque for that one show. Just the feasibility of it, and so unfortunately we're not going to make it there this year. I was really bummed that we didn't. Yeah, but we'll come back in 2023 for sure.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we brought you on today for kind of a special little segment, some bonus footage. Armored Saint.
Yeah.
They're celebrating their 40th year in existence as a band. They're a label, Metal Blade, 40 years as well. It's our 40th interview for the classics, just the online stuff.
Killer.
But I know you have a good connection with them, both like I do growing up listening to them, seeing them in concert, but you have a unique relationship in that you know Gonzo Sandoval, the drummer from Armored Saint, and the entire band. First I want to ask you, you were at the show in 1984? Metallica?
Actually, it was 1985.
85.
March 3rd, 1985.
Okay.
And it was at Graham Central Station.
Now it's Graham,
and,
right? Or Graham. Everybody gets them. I think it was Graham or Graham?
Graham.
Okay.
Graham. Like graham cracker.
Right. Thanks for the clarification. I kept thinking it was Graham.
Yeah. It's Graham Central Station is what it was, but it was March 3rd, 1985,
Right.
And yeah, it's you know, and I actually found, check this out. Nope. I don't know if you could see that well.
Oh yeah, there you go. Perfect. Oh yep. Oh, nice, dude. Perfect.
So,
oh, well preserved too.
So yeah, I had to go down. We were talking before, and I had to kind of like jar my memory. You know, it's been a long time.
Right.
But check it out. I don't know if you noticed. Ticket prices: Metallica, Armored Saint, Grim Reaper. Guess how much the ticket price was?
Well, I know, so I'm going to say, but I hear what you're saying.
I just showed you.
Like $5, you know, because I remember
$6.
$6. Because I saw Raven for $5 over there.
Yeah, this was $6, dude.
Damn. That's crazy.
And the service charge was a whopping 75 cents.
Ooh, man, they were gouging us.
The good old days, right?
Right. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You know, and another thing that you know, with Armored Saint, you know, I was kind of, I'm horrible with dates. You know, it's you know, something can happen, you know, 15 years ago, and I think it just happened like last week. You know, my wife's always making fun of me. She's like, "No, babe, that's been like years." I was like, "No, that just happened." She's like, "No, it's been years." So my mind's kind of like this big, I don't know. It's just one big blur, kind of.
Well,
you know,
hey, man,
as far as stuff goes.
You're a rock star, dude. How are you gonna remember?
Dude, it's you know, it's bizarre. But I had to jar my memory,
Right.
And the thing is, what I was going to say, oh yeah, so Armored Saint, so you know, back to Armored Saint, the thing that really got me, like, made me really freaking dig Armored Saint was when I heard the first riff to Nervous Man.
Okay.
You know, that
right.
You know, I was just like, oh, son of a bitch. It wasn't fast. It wasn't like thrash metal like Metallica was doing, you know, all the Fight Fire with Fire and everything from Ride the Lightning at that time. And that was just like, you know, blew you away. It's like you never heard anything like that, you know?
Right.
Of course, there was Slayer, you know, but it was kind of a different thing. And but when Armored Saint came, you know, when I heard that riff, I was like, holy crap, this is heavy, but in a different way, you know. And it's just like, damn, you know. And I realized that they were doing songs from the Delirious Nomad album at that show.
Okay.
Because that album came out actually in January of 1985, and that show was in March of 1985. So the album had already been released, and they were just going out fresh on that album. So,
okay,
freaking on fire, yeah.
So that they weren't here for March of the Saints. That wasn't March of the Saints. That was Delirious.
It was in March of the Saints, yeah.
Okay.
Although I'm sure many songs, I don't remember what the set list was, but sure many songs were from, you know, March of the Saint and prior stuff. But
well, at the time we had only had those two albums and the EP, which two songs were already on those albums as well. So
right, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying my memory on that. I didn't go to that show, and that's a tough one for me to always swallow because I went to Slayer's first show here. Everybody
yeah.
one. For whatever reason, I didn't go. And, you know, I was 14, 15 years old. Probably money was probably the situation, or my dad said I couldn't go, or I was punished or something like that. So I'm always finding people that went to that. I'm like, damn, tell me more. If I'm not mistaken, Saint power issue, or because I always hear about the power.
Just the power outage, you know, and that was an early show to me. So when something like that happened, it's like for the first part you're kind of like, oh shit, what happened, you know. You just don't know what's going on, and you're waiting, you don't know if it's part of the show, or you don't know the show is going to come back, and just that nervousness. But it's like, for me, all of it was new to me,
Yeah.
you know. So it was just like, holy crap, this is what happens at a live concert, and you know, they were so loud, basically, that, you know, I mean, there weren't that many bands of that caliber, at least I would imagine, coming through like Graham Central Station and stuff like that too. So I'm sure that the PA system at that point too, or the power was kind of maybe not sufficient for, you know, the balls that they were going to give it at the show. So you know, I don't really know what happened, but, you know, eventually
I've heard all kinds of crazy stories. Even you and I, Poots, Eric has a mutual friend has a story that he told me got beer poured on him by James Hetfield later on in the set, and I believe it, because only at that place we're that close and that intimate. It's kind of like when you watch The Ultimate Revenge, you know, with Slayer, Exodus, and Venom, like Studio 54, when they figured it for metal bands to play, or rock bands, or any kind of band. That's what Graham Central reminded me of. So I can imagine Armored Saint there, you know, and Metallica blasting, you know, because I later saw, you know, Accept and King Cobra and all these other bands, Slayer, Exciter, Megadeth. I saw all those bands play there, and I kind of figured they probably took care of that sound issue so it wouldn't happen again. But that was an early show with Metallica and Armored Saint at that venue.
It's just bizarre, you know. And the next time I saw Metallica after that was when they opened for Ozzy.
Okay.
You know, so it had been a little while, but they were still relatively new. I mean, they were opening for Ozzy. You know what I mean? And
give me 1 second, man. I'm gonna have to put her away real quick. She wants to go. I don't want people thinking I'm abusing this cat. Yeah, she got separated from her brother, and she doesn't like that. So
bummer.
Yeah, but so you know, we were talking kind of one of the things about listening to Armored Saint that I love, and why I'm commemorating them coming through. They don't come through Albuquerque very often. Matter of fact, I'm kind of hard pressed. I don't think I saw them anymore after, or they came another time for. God, it was not Raising Fear, I believe, which is after Delirious Nomad, and I can't remember, that was a Tingley or a Civic Auditorium show. They opened up for somebody, and I can't remember, but you know, I've seen Armored Saint in LA a couple times. I've seen them more here in LA, I should say, than I have in Albuquerque. You know,
well, you probably saw them with Savage Grace, because we were talking about Savage Grace. You know, and at one point, I think they were opening for Savage Grace, and then at some point it flip-flopped.
Oh, really?
You know? And I know, and I know even Metallica, because they were from the Bay Area, when they would come down to LA, because Armored Saint was an LA band.
Right.
Armored Saint was huge in the LA scene, and they were doing shows even with like Abattoir. Remember them? But all these bands that they were playing with, Savage Grace, Armored Saint was a bigger band in LA than Metallica was. So I think what they were doing is when they would come down to LA, Metallica would open for Armored Saint, and then when they would go other places, they would flip flop. You know, so it's crazy to see how, you know, everybody kind of flip flops and all that stuff too. And another band that they actually toured a lot with, which is kind of cool for this tour that's coming up, Wasp. You know, they've done multiple tours with Wasp.
Right.
I think in '82 they did a tour with Wasp, but just multiple tours with Wasp. And sorry.
Yeah. They're playing the Halloween show here in Albuquerque, and with
that's gonna be cool.
They're supporting Wasp. Yeah. And by the time this airs, you know, that show will already have been done. But man, I can't wait. I am so fucking excited. That's why, you know, I gotta call everybody I know. I want to kind of put something together special for this. That was a band you and I grew up with, and like you said, they were they were just a straight. If you ever asked, okay, what's a heavy metal band? Straight up heavy metal band, you would say Judas Priest, but you would also say Armored Saint, because they didn't go thrash, they didn't go industrial, they didn't cross over into subgenres of any type. They stayed heavy and they stayed metal. They stayed relevant. I thought very good. What's your thoughts on them? You know, and the impact that they've had. You know, 40 years in heavy metal for Armored Saint.
Wow. I mean, the impact is, you know, they're still relevant to me.
Right.
They just put out a new record. I think it was last year. Might have been the beginning of this year.
Right.
And it's every bit as good as all their other work. You know, it's like they haven't compromised any of it. And I don't remember a period where, you know, other bands have those periods where it's like, I don't really dig from this era to this era. But those few albums kind of lost it for me, and they tried to reinvent themselves. Armored Saint just stayed true to what they were the entire time. And this new record sound is an Armored Saint record, and it's killer. You know, I listen to it, and it's just like, holy crap, you know. And so, you know, when they play these songs live, it's going to be every bit as good as you know, every other song in their set. You know, I think I'm really bummed that I think I'm not going to get to see this tour, because I really want to see this tour. You know, both Wasp and Armored Saint.
Yeah.
But you know, I've gotten a chance to see Armored Saint in the last 10 years several times. You know, and again, they still totally kick ass. It's like, I think they're an underrated band. You know, there's certain bands around that era that, you know, went through the stratosphere. Obviously, like Metallica is one of them. Slayer's another one. But you have your Exoduses, and you still have all these bands: the Exodus, the Testaments, the Orange Saints and stuff like that. They were still an integral part of that entire scene. That you know, it's just they had to be there. There wouldn't have been a scene otherwise, you know. And I think they're every bit as good as any of the bands that made it through the stratosphere, you know.
Right.
But
I think they were part of the foundation, I think, of building metal. Period.
Yeah.
No matter which subgenre you want to say. Yeah. They were one of the first that I got into. I remember seeing Can You Deliver on the video, and I was like, damn, man, this lives up to everything I've heard about this band at the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, not only that too, but, you know, for the label Metal Blade, you know, they're still a Metal Blade artist.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
I think they are. And they've been with them for the entire time. I mean, all the other bands started on Metal Blade too. And that was the one label that basically brought all those bands to us. So without bands like Armored Saint at that point too, the label may not have been able to support doing what they were doing, which would have maybe caused some of the other bands that went through the stratosphere to go away.
Right.
And we may have, you know, they just, so it's, I think they're part of the skeletal core of the metal scene. You know, it's like they're the part of what held it up, and it is what's still holding it up, you know.
In particular, your relationship with Gonzo Sandoval, from drummer to drummer, what is it about his style that you find? What are some of the unique things that he does that you find interesting about him? Like I said, from drummer to drummer.
Yeah, I mean, Gonzo's just a hard rock drummer, you know, and I love that about him. He plays exactly what you want to hear from music that they're playing, and he's a great, you know, the parts that he comes up with are great. And he's just true to what he is, you know. It's like he's not trying to follow the latest trend in drumming or anything. And I think even his drum kit, I think he's had that drum kit, the one that he's going to be using on tour now, for probably decades.
Really?
You know, and has been using that same kit. And it's just like, man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like, you know, and I think his overall style and outlook to everything is the same way. You know, it's just like, dude, this kit's been working for me for decades. Why do I need something else? You know, it's like, and you know, he's just great. He's just solid. And not only that, he's a sweetheart and he's a great guy. And, you know, it's like him, his brother Phil, and, you know, I met their mom actually.
Nice.
Yeah. When it picked up Gonzo from he was over at his mom's, and we went to Aerosmith a few years back together. And that was kind of cool. Just
nice.
Chilling and stuff like that. But
that's really
he's just a great guy, man. He's just down to earth dude. You know, everybody in Albuquerque would be able to relate to him like a guy that you've known your whole life. You know, it's like he's like you. You know, he's just one of us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I love that about him.
That's cool.
Very, very humble. But he's very into metal, and he believes in what he does, and that's just in his soul. That's who he is.
One of the things that I'm proud about Armored Saint, and I talked to you about this before, because I feel the same thing about you and several others, is we're Latinos, Chicanos, you know, they're from LA, you know, we're from Albuquerque, but there's kind of you know, there's that relatability. You brought up, you know, his mom, Gonzo's mom, going, you know, I remember going to your house and your mom making us burritos. We were practicing in our hardcore band, you know, and the next day we all pass out, you know, at night, go to a party, whatever, and your mom. So that's kind of cool. But I thought that there's so many of those musicians in LA, like Juan Garcia who's now with Ice-T and Body Count with Agent Steel, you know, the Slayer guys, you know, there's been a lot of Latino and Chicano representation, especially from that LA area. You kind of speak a little bit about how that kind of means to you coming from Albuquerque, because out here we're so isolated.
Yeah, we were, you know, and when I was out there, I never really even thought about it, but you know, that's the other thing with the metal scene that I don't think the metal scene ever had that. You know, you had to look like David Lee Roth in order to be successful in music. You know, because some of the other genres of music, that's kind of what it was. It was all about a certain image. I mean, there's always an image thing. I mean, Armored Saint had the whole leather, you know,
the
warrior
suits.
armored suits and stuff like that, which I thought was
cool.
I mean, that was cool. That was metal. I would like to still see them do, you know, wear that stuff. It'd just be cool. But you know, I mean, Blackie still does Blackie, you know, when he performs, you know, and Alice Cooper still does Alice Cooper. I mean, why couldn't you do that? You know? Kiss still does Kiss.
Yeah. They dumped it right after March of the Saint, pretty much, right? They stopped the suits. So
yeah, they could have. Yeah. I'm not really sure when they lost I wonder if they have all that stuff still.
I'd like to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I worked for Blackie for a little while, a short time, and I helped move a lot of his stuff from one house to the other house, and he had like these storage lockers and sea containers of stuff that had to go into these storage facilities, these climate control storage facilities, because he has like every master tape that he's ever recorded. I mean, it's just like a whole, I don't know what he's ever going to do with any of that stuff, but except re-release, I don't know. But anyway, there's a trip going in there and seeing all the stuff that we remember seeing, you know, all the outfits with the saw blade on the crotch, and it's like, oh, holy crap, you know. So you know, it's funny to see where stuff ends up, you know. So I wonder if they have their outfits still.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And I'd be hard pressed to see that big old blade out of his pocket. that was wild stuff. I want to go back to what we were talking, because I interrupted your flow, and that was about the, you know, what you were saying, how diverse metal is with everybody. Because like Motown, primarily black artists from Detroit, you know.
Right.
Once in a while, you know, it took them several years until they signed their first white artist, who Kiki D from England, who, you know, sang that song with Elton John.
Yeah.
And she got big, but nothing like that. But metal, much more diverse. Every you know, buddy on the planet is into metal one way or another. And I think that speaks volumes of what happened in that movement.
Yeah. It's the other thing. The other thing with, with with a band like Armored Saint too, is that Armored Saint's from LA, so they had the advantage of that like say I didn't have, for example, in growing up where the scene was already,
Right.
so they could, when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, be playing, opening for some of these great bands, getting exposure, doing all this other stuff like that too. So but LA being so diverse, you're going to have that mix of people that that are out there in the scene, just because that's where they're from, and same with San Francisco and all those bands that grew up in the scene. They had that advantage, and whereas somebody like me, I had to get up and leave,
Great point.
to actually go chase it. So that puts me immediately 4, 5 years behind everybody else that was just raised in LA. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to like graduate high school, save enough money to go out there, look for an apartment, do that whole bit, and so you're like 5 years behind. So I think that's a really cool thing too, is that the metal scene embraced. It was kind of always the underground anyway, but it embraced people that were just solid in the scene, and they found people like Slayer, and it wasn't about what it became. It's just all about the image and everything else. So
Yeah, it was magical time then, and that's why I love Armored Saint so much.
Yeah.
It was so big and integral into your life, into my life, at least anybody that was into that kind of metal at that time. And here we are, 40 years later, and they're still jamming, tearing it up, just like you out there, continue that. I love that. And again, the diversity is all over the place, and that's the way it should be. And I don't know a genre of music that really is as open-minded as metal has been. I know it sounds cliche. I don't want to use cliche, but it's true. You don't care. It crosses so many boundaries.
No, metal is totally about. It's about the music.
Right.
There is a marketing aspect, of course, to all of it, because there just has to be.
Did you know Dave Pritchard? When
I did,
he was one of the originals, and then he passed away from a bout with cancer, and then Jeff Duncan comes in, went after Symbol of Salvation. Right.
I didn't know Dave. In fact, I didn't really know any of those guys while Dave was still alive. I've known Gonzo for maybe only about, I don't even know, less than 20 years.
Okay. It's a long
time. Maybe like 15 years or something like that. I'm not even really sure where we got to know each other or anything like that. It might have been through Joey Vera. It might have been through, the circles kind of intertwine all over the place. So it's sometimes you just don't remember where you met somebody or anything like that. But Gonzo and I, clicked right away, and we still keep in touch, like I said. And he was even calling me recently, looking for help with the drum tech, and we go back and forth with like endorsement companies and stuff like that. We call each other and, hey, talk about that stuff too. And so I have a history with them. I worked for them too. I did some shows with them a while back. I think it was one of Metal Blade's anniversaries that they did.
Oh, cool.
And they played, and the funny thing is, I actually met Jason Priestley. Remember him? No, not Jason Priestley. Who was the other guy? The other guy from Beverly Hills.
90210.
The one that died. Yeah, the one that died.
I remember Jason. No. God, no. Oh, it's killing me. I'm gonna have to look it up.
The other guy. Anyway, I met him. He was at the show, which was weird. It was the guy that played, I think, Dylan.
He played Dylan. I can't remember the name though. His real name. I liked him as an actor. He was actually pretty cool.
He was cool as a person, but he was he was actually there. He was at the show, he he came up and said hi and shook my hand and said, "Hey, it's good to see you." And for the longest time, I was like, who the hell? Like, where do I know this guy from? Like, I couldn't figure it out for the whole. And then it hit me. I was like, oh yeah, Luke Perry.
Luke Perry.
No, yeah.
That's a great story, man.
But he was obviously an Armored Saint fan too. So because he was at that show and
that's funny.
And hanging out and rocking out to the guys and stuff like that too. But
too bad it was Brittany Theisen that was a fan, and you met her.
I know, right?
But Luke Perry's pretty cool. Luke Perry, well, yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah. But well, obviously because he was an Armored Saint fan. But
right, exactly.
But yeah. So anyhow,
let me ask you something. Anything crazy happened or that day of Armored Saint Metallica that you went to in Albuquerque? Anything? As a concert goer, I mean, did anything significant happen to you that day, or was it just another day in the hood, go to the show and have fun?
Well, it wasn't another day in the hood because it was like my first show.
Oh,
so it blew me away. It was like it was insane. It was intense. It was like everybody has that oh crap moment, and stuff, and seeing bands, and most people, in the scene say it was when they saw Kiss for the first time, but for me it was Metallica and Armored Saint, so it was kind of like the that's the intro. So
there you go. For me it was Rat. So I mean, I'm pissed that I missed that Metallica show though, and it's hard when people talk about it and you're like, I wasn't there. You feel like kind of
Rat's another band that Armored Saint and Wasp also triple billed with.
Kind of had a kinship with them growing. Well, they were coming.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Rat, Armored Saint, Metallica. It's kind of weird, They would all be on the same bill, but they weren't. Well, I mean, Wasp, not Metallica. Yeah. Wasp, Armored Saint, and Rat.
And Rat.
Shared the bill.
I'm sure was in that mix, and all those bands.
Could have been,
yeah. Some wild times. Very cool. You happen to know Gonzo has a pretty good, pretty interesting hobby. He's a photographer on the side. He likes taking pictures. Tell us about what you know about his hobby.
Yeah, I mean, he's an enthusiast, and he's been around enough live shows to know what the shot is. He loves going to shows and just being the guy in the pit taking live photos of bands, and it's really cool to be on that side of it too, and really capture what probably all the shots that he wishes that a photographer got of him is shots that he's able to capture with somebody else, so that's kind of cool. But that's just another creative outlet passion that he has, and I know he's really serious about that, and
ever getting pictures of you, like just taking pictures, like hanging out, maybe having beer, chilling, anything like that?
I think we did, but I don't think I've ever seen them. I think when we went to Aerosmith together, he was taking some shots, and we took some shots together too. But
is that the one you went with his mom?
Well, no, we didn't go with his mom. I just met her.
Oh, you met her
at that time? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought you.
Yeah,
and it's mom.
Yeah, and she, she was so cool. I mean, she could be like my mom too. It's like like we were saying, it's
very relatable.
Very relatable. It's like family. It's like
What do you like to do on the side? What's one of your hobbies? Painting, right? You like to paint? You do
paint.
Yeah.
Well, I do oil painting. I do. I'm getting really into digital art lately too. Just art. I mean, I always have to be using my hands. If it's not that, I'm doing carpentry or building something, or it's always something with my hands. So it's only fitting that I'm a drummer.
That explains a lot, because recently I got a chance to see something I never knew existed, and that's Randy Castillo, the late Randy Castillo here in Albuquerque, from Albuquerque, had some artwork that he painted.
He painted too. Yeah.
I've seen some of your artwork, and it's like fantastic. I mean, it's like really detailed, unique. It's beautiful. It could be in a museum. The same thing with Voivod, their drummer Away, makes all the painting and all the work, all their conceptual work, and he's the drummer. So that you explained a whole lot in a nutshell. They're saying that your hand's always got to be moving. It's bizarre.
Yeah, a lot I think a lot of drummers kind of do that. I know Rick Allen from Def Leppard,
Right.
also is an artist. There's a number of can't recall all of them right now, but there's a number of drummers that are all artists and or they like building things, or they're always creating something. It's like you always have to keep your hands occupied somehow.
That's
I don't know what it is. You
That's
know, a lot of them are even mechanics. You know, a lot of them, you know, like to
like
work on cars or
thing.
motorcycles or
right. Cozy Powell.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, it's funny
Cozy
because there's a conception like in sports, or a misconception, like the big offensive lineman in football. A lot of people think, oh, that's a big, fat, dumb dude. And those guys are the most intelligent players on the field. And I think a lot of people, when they think of drummers, they think of like Animal from the Muppets, like a crazy dude that all he wants to do is just be crazy. But they don't know that most of you have a pretty introspective artistic side that would blow their minds away.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just the constant need to create, I guess, is what it is, you know? And for me, it's not just because it's a physical thing. It's like drums are a physical instrument. You know, I mean, every instrument you have to actually physically play, but it's not as physically demanding as, you know, as drumming, you know? So I like things, like I said, I like hammering. I like, you know, painting. My art style is very kind of aggressive and kind of sloppy in a way to where I don't know. It's like it's almost playing drums with paint. And in fact, funny thing, I actually did a painting with drumsticks. To get because I like a lot of texture on my paintings. It's impasto is the kind of the word for it. It means like paste. It's an Italian thing, but it means it's basically a lot of texture. It's like putting paste on a canvas. But so I did it with drumsticks, and I just sat there and I played the whole shape of everything. Yeah, and it was actually a painting of Peter Criss that so it came out cool. But it was just, I was like, all right, I like these two things. Why not combine them and see, you know?
So back in the day, they
come up with. You know? I mean, you could pay.
Back in the day,
what?
Back in the day, they probably would have given you Ritalin for that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but no, for me, it allows me to. I guess with drumming too, it's when I can focus the most. Because when I'm painting or when I'm playing drums or even mowing the grass, you know, or vacuuming, I'm just focused on just doing that, and it's cool because you don't. It's like therapeutic to do stuff, you know.
Yeah.
When we're on tour, I'm constantly just drawing stuff, and it's an amazing way to just be still and kind of you know, help the time pass along, because you know, when you're on tour, there's a lot of downtime. You know, it's like you play for your hour and a half or whatever, but most of the day you're kind of waiting to either sound check or to, you know, to play the show or do meet and greet and stuff like that. But so art is kind of like an escape for me. It gives me something that I can just constantly be working on.
That's interesting.
And and I have a beginning and a completion, and just the reward I get is just from completing something and then looking at it and being like, oh, cool, and then just move on and do the next one. You know.
Are you good at math?
Here's my wife would say no. However, everything that I do is math. You know,
right? That's why
I'm good at math. The way that I understand it, I can figure practically anything out. But it's not going to be like, I never passed algebra
Right.
ever. I took it twice, could not pass it just because I couldn't. I just didn't get with the way you had to do the work, to come up with a certain problem. I could find other ways, but I never passed because I didn't do it the way that, even if I got the right answer, it wasn't the way that they were teaching me how to do it. But so it's kind of a weird thing. But playing drums is math. Even having the carpentry is math. Painting is math in a lot of ways.
Right.
But like trigonometry and geometry, which are above algebra, ace those. There was no problem. That was practical. It made sense to me. So I think anything that makes sense to me, and if it's practical, algebra, I just never saw a use for it. Even though there are, times when you would need it, but I still managed to figure it out no matter what. Kind of weird.
Yeah, I had
The
this
way the mind thinks.
conversation.
I don't know.
I don't remember who I had this conversation with. Might have been my girlfriend about math and the musicians and drummers, and like how to me it's like all you guys see is numbers. Me, I'm horrible at math. I don't like math. I'm lazy.
Yeah.
I don't like to deal with it. The formulas is probably, and the discipline is, like you said, probably a little bit out there with algebra. But as a painter, geometry has to be one of the big components to your mentality, and then of course, like you said, the timing. Playing with a band, and not only on the drums, but playing, as a group. You have to have that down, and you have to understand it, know it, kind of see it ahead of time. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think a lot of that just I think it just comes from the inside. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think you have to have it. You can develop it, of course, if you work really hard at it. But I think you have to have it, and then develop it to just to make your possibilities limitless, as far as what you can actually do. But I think there's some people that you see in karaoke that they just can't they can't sing on on the beat. Or you see people at concerts that are clapping.
That's me.
Opposite of the really.
I hate that, man. Everybody will do rhythm, and I'm like,
right, yeah. But it's just like the odd one, It's like,
right.
But I mean, it's
you try to catch up,
just, But there's.
And if any of this goes on the cutting room floor, that's fine with me.